Greetings, greetings, greetings. You are now tuned into the vault. Trust Christian owned that they control everything. Just want to thank you for tuning in live or listening to replay. Always appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. Everyone that listens to the many different episodes, always appreciate it. People that have listened for years, and if you're new to the episode, definitely appreciate you. Definitely want to do this episode today. This is episode The Vault, episode 273, Shareholder Capitalism. And really wanted to do this episode. Once again, we do the episodes for the trustees. A lot of trustees listen in the archives and the replays. So we always want to just, have that continued conversation even outside of trustee training. This is a topic that what we've seen in the public has come up under a lot of scrutiny. And we just wanted to address this and have this conversation today about shareholder capitalism. This is a system where people are allowed to build companies that allows people on the public side to invest in companies where there are shares that are issued to the stockholders in the company and move forward in a capacity in which they can have equity stake inside of the company and move forward from that perspective where they grow with an equitable percentage increase, as most people would like for it to be, in a positive way, and for that to grow to where when they quote unquote cash out, when people liquidate their equity, their position inside of the company as far as equity, people move on and they can liquidate that. So really wanted to talk about this today because there's so many people in the public that ask about shareholder capitalism and what it really means for America. Is it worth starting a company anymore and taking it public? And so we just wanted to run through some examples that have happened over the past 10, 15, 20 years. Right now, even in the height of 2020, we still see companies going public with high multiples. They're going in and doing billion-dollar valuations. They're raising pre-IPO money, which is initial public offering, where they do offer the shares to the public, which is initial public offering. So a lot of people don't know about pre-IPO fundraising. People don't know how to get stakes in those things, and this is an educational block, but really it's not just an educational block, it is a financial block. It is a block where terms in most of these contracts that are pre-IPO are traditionally going for a position where you have to have a certain amount of capital to be invited to that platform. A lot of those platforms involve private placement memorandums. Traditionally, PPMs used to be for private investors that were considered sophisticated or considered qualified investors. These are people that were traditionally making over $250,000 a year. So if they got into an investment for $25, $50, $100,000 plus, these people would have the sophistication to never let it affect their standard of living. Whereas traditionally, after the IPO, people that are making less than $250,000 a year are allowed to invest in that particular company. Now, there's some variations to that rule based off of how many unaccredited investors you can have, how many unqualified investors you can have in these pre-IPO fundraising sessions. And so a lot of people have felt throughout the years that they've lost out on great opportunities for pre-IPO fundraising, and now they're in a position because of their income, not just because of their knowledge, but because of their income, they're put in a position where they're not able to invest pre-IPO, but they are able to invest after the initial public offering. So we wanted to talk about the fact that because of a financial disparity based off of not having the level of income, and you all can go look up the definition of what a qualified investor is, what a sophisticated investor is, what even a accredited investor is, because these are people that have the ability to invest in these companies before IPO. So we've seen companies raise, $10 million, $20 million, $100 million, $500 million, which is $500 million. We've seen companies raise $700 million right now, even whatever time it is. Banks are in the business of lending money. Traditionally, most of the what people call pre-IPO investments, those are coming from banks. The pre-IPO initial public offering investment traditionally comes from what we call institutions, not just sophisticated investors. So, companies such as a bank, such as J.P. Morgan, or any other major investment bank. That's why they call them IBs, investment banks. These investment banks do traditionally go in and do pre-IPO fundraising with these companies. They do go in and do these things. And so by us knowing that, a lot of the times you can actually check the company balance sheet to see how much pre-IPO money that they've raised when you are looking at IPOs and initial public offerings. And so you can see how much money they've raised. And ladies and gentlemen, we've seen companies literally have slowed down on going IPO and are happy with pre-IPO. They are still sitting on the stock market being traded. They're usually called OTCs, which are over-the-counter stocks. These are companies that traditionally have not gone IPO yet. Initial public offering, which means they're offered on a exchange that's regulated by the SEC, even though they're still regulated because they have launched a security as a offering to private investors or public investors. The regulations are definitely different for OTC as opposed to whether you see a stock that's listed on a NASDAQ, or you see a stock that's listed on the Dow, or a stock that's listed on the S&P 500, or any other stock, the FTSE 100. When you see stocks that are launched on these exchanges, they are what's called IPO stocks. These are stocks that when you look at them, you can go and buy them even if you don't make $250,000 a year. So we wanted to address the fact that when you look at this type of capitalism, there is actually a knock against this form of capitalism where anyone such as yourself can have a dream, can actually create a PPM. You can go get one from a lawyer. Traditionally, they're pretty expensive. They usually cost over $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 plus because the contract is pretty much putting that company in a place where it should be raising $50,000, $100,000 plus, millions of dollars plus, for the fact that it has a PPM in place, it has the proper documentation, it's worded correctly via the law that lawyers have put in place, basically, or have templates, boiler templates, things of that nature. And the SEC is regulating them based off of how many unaccredited investors they can have in the beginning, things of that nature. So a lot of people are knocking this form of capitalism because they say that it doesn't work. People say that it creates a greater divide between wealth and people that have and people that have not. And this is something that, this is why the vault is created. This is why the vault does what it does, is because we know and we're very aware that there is a wealth gap that is created, that has been created, and it is not just based off of knowledge. It's not just based off of the fact that someone doesn't have the knowledge that they need. What happens is a lot of time people just don't have the finances that they need. They don't have $250,000 income with $1 million assets and holding outside of their home that they live in, or their residence that they live in. So we're very aware of that, and for that reason, little sprinkles of knowledge is not going to hurt someone. It's actually going to aid someone to get into the bracket of $250,000 income a year with $1 million outside of their residence. The information gap is still there because people are afraid, people are not educated on what an IPO is, to take their dream IPO. We've seen companies throughout history take their dreams, people like you and I that have started from zero, that have started from scratch, and have launched companies on stock exchanges. And this situation is not based off your color. A lot of times, a lot of people say with a wealth gap, the wealth divide is based off of color, when in all actuality it's not, ladies and gentlemen. We actually know quite a few successful IPO companies that have been launched via different cultures, different colors, that have launched companies on these big exchanges and over the counter, pre-IPO fundraising. And so once again, it's not based off of gender or color. Fundraising happens all the time for women and women's projects. Fundraising happens all the time for people that have autism. All types of different people are raising funds pre-IPO. And so now, because there is a knock against shareholder capitalism pre-IPO for people that will be considered minorities that are just looking to raise funds previous to going to public offering, that type of thought process is being distorted, is being convoluted to a new term, and we're going to get to what that term is called. But a lot of times, shareholder capitalism is looking like it's taking a beating in the public, saying that the traditional system of capitalism is not working, when in all actuality, some of the greatest wealth at its best right now is being created in capitalism. People are fostering ideas to have someone else invest in them pre-IPO. So that type of thought process has been knocked for years now, and we've seen an attack on shareholder capitalism. And the new term that is going to be replacing this term, knowingly or unknowingly, will be stakeholders. Stakeholder capitalism. Stakeholder capitalism looks a lot different than shareholder capitalism because it's supposed to take into account the customers of the company, the employees of the company, because people don't want situations like Enron to happen ever again, where this company, literally the CEOs, do nefarious things, and then next thing you know, their employees, next day they try to go to work and the company has yellow tape sitting around it saying that this is a do not cross sign via the police, because there are criminal activities that have been brought up against these companies. And so there is a perspective, we're not going to put a label on the group of people that have this perspective, but there is a group of people that have this particular perspective that says that these companies, such as a Amazon, such as Facebook, all these other companies are participating in what's considered antitrust laws, which is creating a monopoly, buying out competition, not only buying out competition, blocking competition on their particular platforms, and things of that nature. So we've seen this throughout history, ladies and gentlemen. One of the benefits of shareholder capitalism and the economics of that system is it has worked in spite of failure being a part of it. A lot of people will say, well, that's what public school does. It does produce some failures, but it doesn't produce all failures. Correct. But most people are going to go to public school. Most people have a public school education. Most people have that education, and they say that that system's not broken. People say that this system is not the worst system in the world. Well, where are we at in 2020? We're at a point now where that system has become so broken that people say school choice is the conversation of the day. Should school choice be allowed, where people are able to go to different schools that are not in their district based off the funding going to that district having enough students in it? And so there is a shareholder thought process that could be kicked out. It can be marginalized, saying that individuals that have a dream, that want to raise funds privately, that should not be taken into account over the fact that these people are going to hire people. These people are going to be servicing a customer. And so now there is a policies that are looking to be passed in. These are conversations that are going on a larger scale about the fact that the government's saying, well, look, we have so many people in debt to the governments. We have so many people in debt to these schools that we should create a stakeholder system, a system that says we are all created equal. Well, are people going to leave equal opportunity for everyone being created equal? Because once again, we've seen every culture, every nationality, every color, every race launch a stock on the stock exchange, whether it's public or pre-IPO. And for that reason, that system works. But now there is a conversation that's going on that there should be a stakeholder system where funds are allocated to everyone evenly. We all start at zero. We don't all start at zero. Some people's parents have made a conscious decision to put their children in debt. And this is the life that people grow up to. This is the real life people grow up to, where their parents leave them a house that's in debt, where their family leaves them debt in general, that they have to now allocate and put in a proper position because they weren't left with that. So now you see a mentality of, well, the government says, you know what, your family wasn't going to have a trust. Your family wasn't going to have a will. So we're going to go ahead and put a social contract in place. We're going to put social capitalism in place. That means that it's equal for everybody. Well, if capitalism didn't work, how is it that every culture was able to launch a service or a product on a stock exchange? How are they able to do this even before IPO? They're able to do this pre-IPO if the system is broken. Well, there's a allocation towards certain genders, certain races. Ladies and gentlemen, the opportunity to change that is here. But there is a thought process, and it goes like this. There are no winners, there are no losers, only participants. We'll say that again for what stakeholder capitalism looks like. There are no losers, there are no winners, just participants. How many of you all have children that are going through sports that they get the participation badge now? They get the participation award. They don't get wins or losses anymore. This is where we are in the world in 2020, where winners and losers should not be created, only participants. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've seen what the acts of socialism looks like. We've seen where supposedly everyone's created equal. It's called Cuba. It's called Venezuela. Ladies and gentlemen, how is it that this thought process works so well, but when you look in China, this still form of communism, socialism, somehow they have people that are living in penthouses, and then they have people that are living in shacks. But how does communism work? How does stakeholder capitalism work in their society, where you have a shareholder responsibility to the government now? You have a stake in the government. Well, what happened to America? Didn't you have the right to vote or not vote? Well, what happens when you don't have the right to vote, but you're supposed to vote because it's a part of your social contract? What happens when you have to be forced to pick the so-called, what do they call them? The lesser of two evils. You can decide not to vote at any time in a shareholder capitalist system. You have the right to vote. But there is a system, there are systems in the world for perspective purposes that say no. You have a stake in this country. You have a stake in the losses just as much as you have a stake in the pluses, the wins. Really. And what have those countries done so far? Shareholder capitalism has been under attack for years now. And this mentality of having a participation badge is becoming more and more prevalent in the society. More and more prevalent in people saying, well, look, there are haves and have-nots. There's a wealth inequality gap, and we need to bridge this gap. Well, how is the gap going to be bridged when the education of the population is to get a job? Everyone knows the typical cliche of how Americans are trained. It sounds just like this. You are to study hard so you can get good grades, and when you get good grades you can go to a good college, and when you go to a good college, after you get a degree from a good college, you can get a good job. That is the thought process of the American public school system. That is counterintuitive to shareholder capitalism. Why? It does not teach anyone, it does not train anyone to buy a business, to sell a business. It barely teaches people leadership skills. It teaches people to get yelled at. It teaches people to follow orders and be trained into a position of, you work 5 days a week, you get 2 days off. If you work for a good company, you get a vacation for 2 weeks out of the year if it's a great year. Shareholder capitalism says even after you've gone through that 12 years of programming, you can still come out and go from, hey, I never had a job a day in my life, to launching a company, raising funds privately, and moving forward and becoming a multimillionaire or billionaire. And it has been done over and over and over and over again. Let's look at those systems that have the stakeholder capitalism mentality that says, oh, you're going to be bound to our social woes and social pluses. What is Venezuela producing right now? What are these countries that have communism produce right now? Cuba. People say, but look at China. Ladies and gentlemen, go look at their social credit system that they have in place in China. Appreciate Dallas for tuning in live, listening to replay. We're going to do what it's a social credit system in China. A lot of people don't know about this, but they want to brag about, well, China is a huge country. It's an economic power. And, Trust Christian, they're going to take over and all this good stuff. Okay. Social credit system is a national reputation system. It is developed and being developed by the CCP, Chinese Communist Party. And this program is utilizing a unified code, a unified record system for individuals. Oh, a lot of people listen to the vote and say, oh, I don't want to deal with the social security number. I don't want to deal with that. Okay, well, if you have it, what does this system already establish? One for individuals, one for businesses, and the government to be tracked for its trustworthiness. Wow. So your individual system, your individual merit is going to be tracked by the government in a stakeholder participant system. It is a numerical scoring system that rewards and punishes different actions. They have a mass surveillance system called Skynet. It incorporates facial recognition. It incorporates big data analyst technology, AI, and a program that was created by a company called Google, called Project Maven. But what happened with their system? They said, we're going to control our media because people feel that the media is being tainted in shareholder capitalism. Big companies are controlling the narrative. Amazon owns Washington Post. So now the government is supposed to own the media? Is that what you want? Do you want stakeholder capitalism where the government is controlling the media? That's what people would prefer? People's behaviors are being tracked in stakeholder capitalism. Some of the factors that they take into this stakeholder capitalism is how much blood you donate, how much you give to charity, how much do you volunteer for community services, and so on. Did you know that you can get banned in the system for visiting other parts of the country based off of your tracking and trustworthiness? So are we going to stakeholder capitalism or shareholder capitalism? People say, oh, I wanted us all to be created equal. Ladies and gentlemen, quite a few people that have benefited from going from zero to hero in shareholder capitalism. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are in the United States, slaves, oh no, we can't talk about this. Why not? It's a positive thing for the United States. Slaves freed themselves at points in time. They were enslaved. Do you need us to name off the ones historically that have done it? This is not an unproven thought. There are slaves that have left slavery and they became advisors to presidents. Oh, you don't know about Frederick Douglass. But people want to say, oh, well, that was then. Ladies and gentlemen, that was a part of the system called shareholder capitalism, not him being equal and him being a participant. He had to learn to read. He did. Oh, what about the other people that freed themselves? Freed themselves mean you left the plantation. So we're not going to say, oh, the whole slave plantation freed themselves. They didn't. There are certain ones that left, that freed themselves. And then they became an economic powerhouse. Ladies and gentlemen, we challenge you all, listeners of the vault, to Google how many successful slaves came up in the country of the United States in the past 200 years. They literally wrote a book. They said they were a slave, and then they became what? Successful financially in capitalism. They created a business. They created value for the marketplace through pre-IPO. Why? Because, ladies and gentlemen, how was Frederick Douglass a advisor to presidents? How was he an advisor to presidents, ladies and gentlemen? How was he friends with the president if he was just a participant? Some people say, well, it's not equal for everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to share with you the unbeknownst secret to why most people are not successful. Are you ready? It's called they're lazy. Because in the modern day United States, slavery's not going on. There is no slaveholder mentality. People are born into a system where they have the opportunity to grow. They have an opportunity to create value because they have talents and abilities that they can utilize. What happened, ladies and gentlemen, to people wanting to be competitive? Shareholder capitalism creates and fosters competitiveness. And this is something that we've seen across the board with people for years now, where they've lost their competitive edge. They pretty much just want a participation badge. Look, I was born, I showed up. Look, I'm going to create a debt on society because my parents, my family couldn't pay for anything in the beginning of my life. So I shouldn't be in debt. I should just be able to be given a free ticket and see how that goes. Ladies and gentlemen, you all can Google stakeholder capitalism. You all can Google the social credit system that is in place in China and see how so-called equal opportunity is really not equal opportunity. What it is it's now it's a greater divide between the haves and the have-nots. Do you see politicians riding around in tick-tick bombs? Do you see politicians riding around in anything bad? They have security. Politicians in the United States get lifetime pensions. We thought you were serving. We thought you were one of the people. Why do you need a lifetime pension after that? Oh, wow. You need a lifetime pension for serving in a capacity that you should almost be doing it for free to show that you really care and listening to your constituents? But they're not. And right now there's a narrative of stakeholder capitalism that is going to pervade your everyday life. It's called, hey, just sign a social contract. It's called Social Security. We're going to give you health care when you're 65. Well, what happens if you die before 65? Well, hopefully you have some descendants, because if you don't have a descendant, then what happens? Where does the money go? Unknown question to most people. They're participating in a system, a social contract, that they haven't read all the contract. Well, my family, my parents, they gave me the Social Security Trust, Christian. There's nothing I could do about it. But how many people contact the vault and say, well, do I have to give up the social? What's the social contract? Did you know that you're leaving the private when you sign a public social contract? That's what makes me public trust Christian, is the fact that I signed a social contract with the public government. Hold on. So what does the contract entail? It entails health care. Oh no, the government's pushing a narrative that it should be health care for all. But in what capacity? In the public or the private sector? In the public sector. Because you opted into the social experiment. The social experiment to see, hey, can we trick people to think that their health is inside of our control? Can you give us your right to health? Sure, we'll take your right and we'll give you an entitlement. It's called Social Security, Medicare. Where did that thought process come from? We think it was from a guy that was running for office in Europe at one point. We think it was Germany. You all can look up where Social Security that thought process came from. It came from a European politician running in the United States. One politician that proposed it said, hey, it sounds like a good idea for him. Why not give our people the opportunity to retire in financial dignity? But hold on. How many people do you know retire in financial dignity at 65 solely based off Social Security? Most people don't. So what happened? Are you going to now give up your right for an entitlement? The government is supposed to provide people with health care. That is the narrative that's in stakeholder capitalism. Why? Well, you're a citizen. We got to take care of you. You went to public school. We got to take care of you. You don't know any better. Who gave you the education for your health? The standard American diet. Doctors. The government, the FDA, these organizations. But aren't they out for my benefit, Trust Christian? Ladies and gentlemen, if they were out for your benefit, you would have voted for that. Bottom line. So now it's a clear divide between public and private. Trust Christian, I don't want to be in the public. I don't want to be a part of the forced vaccination. I don't want to be a part of the forced social experiment. Then you already know what you got to do. Well, Trust Christian, can I get a job without a social security number? Ladies and gentlemen, shareholder capitalism says you have talents, you have abilities, such as a Frederick Douglass, and guess what you can do? You can go out and create something. Now, whether you do it or not, that's not our problem. But you can. Did you know you could bankrupt a company? Did they not teach that in public school? So guess what? If your idea fails, it's no sweat off of your back. It's the company went under. Right? But people want to get rid of the company going under because they want to go to stakeholder. Well, it went under and people have lost their lives and lost their jobs. Oh, okay. That sounds like the new narrative of, well, AI and computers are going to replace humans at jobs. Have they started doing that already? Well, yeah, Trust Christian, I can't find a decent job now because the computer took my job. The computer took my job. The technology took my job. That's even more of a reason why I need to have a participation badge. The shareholder capitalism thought process. The stakeholder capitalism thought process. Shareholder says you can fail, bankrupt, and go back to zero. Google how many successful entrepreneurs modern day have went through a bankruptcy just with the company, not personally, bankruptcy through the company, and have started another company and grew it to millions of dollars, billions of dollars. There are many. See, ladies and gentlemen, there's a narrative being pushed by fear. Stakeholder capitalism is a push of fear that you are incompetent to create. Shareholder capitalism says it only rewards work and creativity. That's it. Shareholder capitalism is what has made inventions happen. Well, what do you mean, Trust Christian? How can inventions be created? Through shareholder capitalism. Ladies and gentlemen, when you remember, the technology took your job, right? Right. So why do you need to do anything more? Because you're getting a stimulus check. Ladies and gentlemen, the countries that have this even level playing field, where are they in what's called the superpower realm? The superpower realm. They're not. You have to allow freedom to reign supreme in the system, not slaveholder capitalism, stakeholder capitalism. So now you want your family to be judged based off of its social merit? If that was the case, the slave descendants of the country would have the biggest stake because they have one of the largest intangible bills that was ever created. And the longer that that bill goes unpaid, interest should be accrued. Do you really want to see that in the United States? Do you want to know what that would look like? Where the Descendants of slaves became major shareholders in a country. And if they do, what will they do with their newfound wealth? Will they spend it? Or will they create and work? Those are the questions that are being posed right now, to where shareholder capitalism is looking like it doesn't work. But then they have recorded in history that slaves literally learned how to read, learned how to write, and were presidential advisors. But we have to forget this. See, the issue in the States nowadays, or in the world, is the short-term memory loss. The short-term memory loss is increasing ever and ever. I don't remember what happened, when the Zika virus was around. I don't remember what happened when SARS was around. I don't remember what Ebola happened when it was around. We should treat this situation differently. Really? Or maybe there's a social experiment to see how you're going to handle new social contracts. The social contract is wear a mask. It's a social contract. Didn't states label it as a social contract? You have a stakeholder duty to wear a mask. Even if you don't feel like it. Even if you have a tough time breathing. Some businesses will give you a hard time even if you got a doctor's note. You got a doctor's note in your pocket, and these big companies say, oh, you can't come in here because of what? A social contract. It sounds like stakeholder capitalism. Well, I got to take the vaccine so I'm not spreading it around because I don't want to be asymptomatic. Stakeholder capitalism. It is on your doorstep knocking like the Grim Reaper. And people that are born in the United States are born into a country where they have the opportunity to go from zero to hero, to be the first to graduate from college, to be the first millionaire, to be the first billionaire. That opportunity is not off of your doorstep yet. Will it be taken away by a social credit system because people want to vote for universal health care? Why not, Trust Christian? Well, everybody should be entitled to it. They should be entitled to it? Okay. For all the people that say, well, what about people with autism, Trust Christian? We're sorry to tell you the truth, that your family can set up a disability trust. They can set up a special needs trust for children that have autism. Because as soon as you give away that responsibility, there is a special needs trust. There is a disability trust that's called Social Security. But how many people were educated to say, if I ever had a child that was autistic, I will make it a point to get the money to take care of my autistic child through a disability trust, a special needs trust, a qualified disability trust? What happened to that? What happened to that education of over 80 different type of private contracts called trust? What happened to those educations? What happened? Then you go to public school, then you learn how to read and write. Why didn't they teach you about contract? Why didn't they teach you about these things called the trust contract? Oh, because you're going to go into what's called the Social Security Administration trust by default. You think wealthy people utilize Social Security numbers? Of course they don't. They bankrupt businesses. They grow businesses. They understand the position of own nothing, control everything. There is an educational gap, but there is a financial gap. And the way you bridge that is by working your butt off and making something of yourself, your name, and what it's worth. The question is, do you want to have the opportunity to win on your own work ethic? Or do you want to just be placed in a category with your neighbor that you know is doing nothing, and they get the same stimulus check that you get? They get the same health benefits. They get all of these entitlements. What motivation are you going to have to go out and create? Well, that creativity is being diminished as we speak. Bottom line. The ability to create is being diminished to a degree by a thought process of stakeholder mentality. And now we're living in a time where that is even on the table. How is it on the table with a free people? How is it on the table with them? It's on the table because people don't want to work. They saw what technology did. Technology replaced their grandparents. Their grandparents didn't even have college degrees, and they were making $25, $30 an hour, $40 an hour, $50 an hour. They saw that generation of people that didn't have degrees. They got replaced with people with degrees. The people that got degrees and they started working, the jobs in technology continue to diminish their need. So now when people that have degrees go into a job, they hear the term. You ready for the term? It's called overqualified. You're overqualified for a job. Hold on. In stakeholder capitalism, you can definitely be overqualified. That's what it looks like in stakeholder capitalism. What does it look like in shareholder capitalism? It just looks like the company right now doesn't want to pay you, and you can go use your talent somewhere else and still get paid what you feel you're worth. Stakeholder capitalism says, no, don't worry about that. We know you worked hard. We know you got your degree. We know it's technology that's replacing your job and your work. It's replacing quite a few people. So we're going to give you all. And who's the we? The haves. It has to come from somewhere, correct? The wealth disbursement has to come from somewhere. Well, what about the banks, Trust Christian, and the Federal Reserve, and the families that created that system? Ladies and gentlemen, you can choose to participate or not participate. At least you still have that opportunity in shareholder capitalism, where guess what? You don't have to worry about that. The bank's still going to be in the position that it's in. And when you want to deal with stakeholder capitalism, you don't have to worry. You're going to get your beneficiary check every single month, or however often it comes. This is where we are in 2020. People want it to be a so-called equal playing field. But they don't know that it's already written in the Constitution. It's in the Constitution, ladies and gentlemen, that you're created equal in shareholder capitalism. It says it in the founding document. That's why slaves were able to be presidential advisors. So how did that change 100 years later from slavery? How did that change 200 years later? Oh, because some people want to inject a new thought process. They want to replace a word and be semantical and say, well, there's no need to be a shareholder capitalist state. We need to be a stakeholder capitalist state. That sounds more appropriate. They got it wrong in the beginning. Frederick Douglass doesn't think they got it wrong. Booker T. Washington didn't think they got it wrong. W.E. Du Bois didn't think they got it wrong. And many other slaves that came up out of slavery, they didn't get it. They don't feel the system was wrong. But the system's wrong for you in 2020, where you're not even born into a legal slave system. We know what it is. It begins with an L and ends with a Y. It's called lazy. People have become mentally lazy, physically lazy, and those are the people. They may not be too lazy to go vote. And this is why it's so important for anyone to vote, to make sure that someone does not try to take away their freedom to do or not to do because someone doesn't want to do, because someone feels entitled. See, it's called a mentality. It's called entitlement mentality and stakeholder. I'm a customer of the company. I'm supposed to know all the details of the company. It doesn't work that way. These are private people that are allowing you to buy stock. That's it. You don't need to know what's going on in the company. But they do have what? Earnings reports. They do let you know what's going on in the company. What about the employees? There was a generation previous to 2020 that they got things called pensions. They had a stake in the company. They actually reinvested their own money into the company via 401ks. That's being taken out of the culture. Why? Because stakeholder is starting to make its head and make its way. Stakeholder. We're not going to force these companies to give you stock. They're not going to force the employees to do that. the government says. Okay. So what does it look like? We're going to tax the companies. You hear that? They're going to tax the companies. And then the companies, what are the companies going to do? They're going to reinvest more money into technology to eliminate jobs. Simple as that. But the gov says we're going to take the money from these companies and we're going to give it to the people because the people aren't getting it. We just seen a company go from zero to hero. Amazon, Apple, Microsoft. These are the giants, Trust Christian. Ladies and gentlemen, go look at how many stocks are on that are called OTC, over the counter. These are people raising funds privately still. What's wrong with that? They're going to take the money from these companies because they supposedly, dealing with taxes. They're not paying their employees well. Now they have to institute a minimum wage, but they're also going to institute, giving a minimum amount of money to the citizens of their country. Well, guess what? There's no such thing as something for nothing. Oh, the government wants something from you. And stakeholder capitalism. It's called your trustworthiness. Now you have someone that's going to get a lifetime pension based off of regulations, whether you're trustworthy or not. They can put a new law in place for your trustworthiness. You threw gum on the ground. Did you know you can get arrested in certain countries for putting gum on the ground? Oh man, Trust Christian, I don't really think about that. I just throw it out the car. I just throw it on the side of the road. Throw it on the ground. Somebody, the street sweeper will clean it up. That's where we are. That's what stakeholder capitalism looks like. Social credit worthiness. Are you a clean person? We're going to judge and see how clean you are now. Because we need to know where the viruses are being stored at. Are you clean? We need to have a clean attachment to your social credit worthiness, to your trustworthiness. We need to make sure that you're not a hazard to the vulnerable, the people that are in our society. It's a critical moment in time. Appreciate Antioch, California for tuning in live, listening to replay. Shout out to Baltimore for tuning in live, listening to replay. Stay warm in Baltimore. Heard there's a snowstorm coming through Baltimore, Maryland, up there in the northeast region of the United States. Feel free to type into the chat where you're listening live, listening to replay. You have the opportunity to stand for you being equal. And that's not creating a system of participant badges. Now, if you want participant badges, guess what? They have countries already set up for it. But it doesn't look like they want too many people from a free-thinking society. They want people in those societies to never know what's going on in the outside world. That you can create. They want people to fall in line. You're never going to have the opportunity to distribute media because the government owns it. Stakeholder capitalism. Shareholder capitalism has worked. We didn't say it was perfect. We said it works. Appreciate Dallas, Texas for tuning in live, listening to replay. Shout out to Dallas, Texas. It's just interesting, ladies and gentlemen. This is a topic that has to be talked about because people don't understand the wave. Ladies and gentlemen, do you really think that the topic that we're talking about is not serious? How is it not serious when most major cities have cameras on street corners? They are going to utilize facial recognition technology in major cities. You all are aware of this. And what makes you think that there will not be a social credit worthiness inside of these cities? They can see who's committing a crime now at all times. You can't hide. Your social credit worthiness will be tied to how well you perform and not committing crimes in these jurisdictions. Ladies and gentlemen, you are living in environments where they have quotas on speeding tickets. Right? Don't they have quotas on speeding tickets? They have to give out certain number of tickets. You all know, don't you see the cops sitting out at the end of the month? Well, what happens when they get more and more technology? Well, there'll just be a camera saying, look, you were speeding on the highway. There was a sensor. We seen the tags. We gave you a ticket. Appreciate Brooklyn for tuning in live. Brooklyn, New York, tuning in live, listening to replay. Shout out to Brooklyn, New York. Someone asked in the chat, what time do we normally live stream? We usually have a Tuesday episode at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then we have pop-up episodes throughout the week, just because there's certain things that just come up, and we just really want to get it out while the getting's good. So definitely appreciate everybody that tunes in live or listens in the replay, specifically in the replay. But definitely always shout out to everybody that can make the time to get on live. Feel free to type into the chat any questions or comments about shareholder capitalism. What are your thoughts on it? Because this is a topic that is under scrutiny right now, and people are saying, specifically in political environments and people in general that vote for these politicians, they're literally saying that shareholder capitalism does not work. And people just don't understand how free they are until they lose it. And that's all it is. People are very blessed to live in jurisdictions that allow them to create from scratch, where you can start a corporation in a country for less than $300, $500. If your family and friends don't believe in your dream that much, you might want to move around. When they don't want to give you the $300 to $500 to go open up a corporation, to go open up a LLC or a C corp, if you don't have people around you that are supporting you for your goals and dreams, they're stakeholders. They're going to be there when you make it, and they're going to be there if you don't make it. Shareholder capitalism says I have to find people that share the same common interest and view that I have towards the vision of me growing, period. But that thought process, it's not trained in public school. The reason why it's not trained in public school is because it's a conflict of interest. Think about it. Everyone says school teachers are not treated fairly based off of pay. That's what the statement has been. That statement, that type of thought process has gone through society for at least 20 to 30 years. Oh, the teachers don't get paid enough. So why would it be in their best interest for you to create a technology where they're going to educate you to create a technology to where now they're having virtual classrooms? You think they're not doing data analytics on how well they can keep a student's attention on technology right now? How well the teacher is teaching right now? How many students pass in that class virtually right now? It's on a computer. They can see how many kids are going to pass on the computer. They have more data now being collected, more analytics for your social credit worthiness. So the teachers may be in favor of what? Social stakeholder capitalism. Why? Because, hey, look, if the teacher's going to work hard, they don't care about working hard. They feel they're entitled because they're a teacher to get paid more. Shareholder capitalism says the school system that has students in it, the government's going to give the money to. That's why there's a debate in the jurisdiction right now of what is that? School choice. School choice is actually from shareholder capitalism. If you're the best, people want to go to you. If you're not, it needs to go through a bankruptcy. But people are going to get washed away in that process. So there you go. The government's going to come swooping in, and it's going to give you social education. Sounds like public school. But we're going to make sure that no one falls behind. Didn't you hear a program come from the government called No Child Left Behind? And how did that work out? Children are falling out more now than when the program started. Well, Trust Christian, it was a well-intended program. It was supposed to work. It just hasn't worked fully yet. Right. And that's why there are people that don't even have high school diplomas and they're millionaires. That's a fact. There are people that were slaves that became free and were presidential advisors. How did someone get left behind? Well, not everybody makes it, Trust Christian. We're all created equal to make it or not make it. This comes to a question of, do you have someone, is the previous generation looking out for the next generation? Bottom line. Someone had an interesting comment in the chat. They said the video games are better learning tools than listening to a character investing in a social pension. For sure, definitely. And that's why now you see, you're going to see more and more virtual reality educational environments where students can put the goggles on and literally look at their teacher, feel like they're in the classroom, but they're not in the classroom. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, people have to be prepared for the technology to create a stakeholder environment, because technology was shunned for a long time, and now we're in a position where technology is being welcomed and technology is being utilized positively and negatively at the same time. And so for that reason, quote unquote government, certain people, thought processes, people that vote for these people say, well, we need to make sure that everything's created equal. It already is. So they're not stating that. It sounds good. Oh, they want it to be created equal. No, what they're saying is I want it to be a clear divide between the haves and the have-nots. Bottom line. Ladies and gentlemen, there always will be haves and have-nots. And there's nothing we can do about it other than going out and creating and giving away wealth, just like people would say Rockefeller was a evil person. People would say that. It's just the facts, ladies and gentlemen. The first Rockefeller that created the wealth for the family and their lineage through the steel company, they said he was evil. At the end of the day, he has created colleges that people have graduated from. He created endowments for other colleges, for other cultures with their schools, such as Morehouse and Spelman. So, how many people went to Spelman and they're not complaining about the shareholder capitalism and the way he divided up his wealth? People that went to Spelman and Morehouse, they're not complaining about that. And that's how you know shareholder capitalism works. When someone can be labeled as evil and they still can put in positive things into play to help other people educate themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, you got to know physics. Don't those colleges have physics? That's how you're going to build the rocket ships. That's how you're going to learn how to calculate time. Those things come from sciences. The education has been paid for. It's at the schools. People can go to those schools and choose to learn those subject matters. Shareholder capitalism. Oh no, Trust Christian, everybody should get a free education. And what value would it be from one college to the next college? Where is the competitive spirit if we are in a stakeholder, even playing field position? There's no competitiveness. Well, shareholder capitalism says you can compete. You can compete without the education, and you can compete if you don't have the finance. Why? Because in shareholder capitalism, you can raise funds privately, publicly, and privately. Shareholder capitalism says you can be competitive. Stakeholder capitalism says, what's the point of being competitive when we're all created equal? But then we're still going to have this royal class of elite that have everything, and they're distributing the wealth. The Vault is a ever fan of shareholder capitalism because we're trustees. We know if you don't work, you don't eat. Clean air isn't free. Clean water isn't free. So we're going to make it a point to act like we know in Rome you're doing what Romans do. People say, oh, well, what does they say? Bezos is so wealthy, he could give everybody $1 billion. This is what they have on the media. Well, Jeff Bezos is so wealthy, he got $100 billion, ladies and gentlemen. So he could give $1 billion to 7 billion people, and supposedly he still would be fine. If you have $100 billion and you give away 7 billion, you're not losing a lot. And each person can have $1 billion. And what will happen to the world? Would it be a better place? I'll let you think about that. If each person got $1 billion from Jeff Bezos, would the world be a better place? How? We know it's not. And that's why he's not giving the money away either. Because he knows and he thinks that he can do better than the average person.
And that's why he's built a company that employs thousands of people. You know how many people drive trucks for Amazon? You know how many people are doing work for Amazon? But guess what? What does Amazon make, ladies and gentlemen? Nothing. But they are servicing millions of people, billions of people. When are you going to create something out of thin air like that? Because this company wasn't around 50 years ago. And guess what? Not every company is a giant forever. People used to say, oh, Walmart has 4 people in the top 20 richest people in the United States. We'll say that again. Walmart has 4 family members. They all have separate holdings, and their holdings separately puts them in the top 20 wealthiest people in the country. And Jeff Bezos is up there by himself. Let's see what happens when he divides his wealth among 4 people. Will it still be like the Waltons? And people used to say Walmart will never go out of business. Walmart will not be hurt. What do you think Amazon is doing right now? It is clawing retail distribution market space from Walmart. Walmart went online. That's perfectly fine. But people like Prime Day. People like Prime. Walmart hasn't put that in place yet. They don't have 2-day shipping. They don't have overnight almost. He's done things. He's added convenience to people's lives. Bezos did. How many of you all have seen the picture where Bezos was in an office with a bunch of computers around him with Amazon spray painted on the wall? There was a picture of that on the internet. And this is to show you all you can come up for nothing. You all are hearing about these companies go IPO all the time. You have the opportunity to participate in allowing people to invest in your goals and your dreams in shareholder capitalism. It's up to you whether you're going to participate. But stakeholder capitalism might as well be called slaveholder capitalism. You can't perform on your own because you were given a public school education, and the government clearly knows that. So guess what? We're going to give you free healthcare. We're going to give you an income, and we need you to go to this place and pay your social debt, because you can't have social credit without social debt, right? Right? How can you have a social credit system but not have a social debt system? Oh, it sounds like the states right now when people incarcerated are supposedly paying their debt to society, paying their debt to injured property. For violating a social contract, violating a social rule. And what's so crazy is people think, oh, Amazon won't be replaced. Ladies and gentlemen, we got people that listen to this podcast that they were around when social media first started. And everybody knows about Black Planet. Everybody knows about MySpace. Yeah. And what happened to those websites? They didn't adapt. So if Amazon doesn't adapt in the future, you already know what's going to happen there. It's not going to be the only giant on the block. And you have the opportunity to make that happen. You can see things they're not doing right and fix it. But how many people are going to work hard, get the education to create a company? How many people are going to do that? Not too many. But we talk to trustees at this environment because we know that they are the ones that are going to create. This time during COVID has completely conditioned people for more social contracts. And one of those social contracts is signing into a stakeholder place as opposed to being just a shareholder if you choose to buy or sell. There was this thing back when the country first started where the county would allow people to go out and get plots of land by putting their stake in the ground. So it's called staking your claim. So what claim do you have to the United States right now, trustees, if you're private or if you're public? What stake do you have in the government? Do you have a stake because you're a registered voter? Do you have a stake in the government? Do you have a stake in the system? Most people don't want to say, oh, I can create money out of thin air. Of course you can. You have ideas. And as soon as you sell that idea, someone can give you money. So you can create money out of thin air. Shareholder capitalism says you can do that. Stakeholder capitalism says you create an idea and you have to give it to the government. And we're going to disperse it among the citizens. And we're going to figure out who gets it and who doesn't get it. That's antiquated thinking. It hasn't worked since they came up with the social Darwinist thought process. Social evolution says, guess what? This is what they are going to meet about in Davos in 2021. It's called the Great Reset. And people that have been voted into these positions, some of them are corporate leaders, are saying, well, look, I've made billions of dollars, but hey, I don't want to give it away. So let's just create a social credit system. It's so interesting to see how people get wealthy and then they get new. They want to tell you that it's not even for everyone, but they worked their butts off to get in that position. And then they come back and say, well, it doesn't work for everybody. So I'm going to hold on to my wealth, but I'm going to make sure that we create a system now that's more equal, that's more social based. Is that what you're listening to when you hear these leaders say that? These positional leaders. They wanted equality, but they're not willing to give up their stake. What's your stake in the government? What's your stake in the territory you're in? Are you vested or are you invested? Were you vested into the society? Or did you say, you know what? I'm going to leave the private and go into the public and create shareholder capitalism. You're sharing what your private family estate built. That's what you're sharing. You're sharing your private family estate's creativity. So it's more incumbent upon you now to be in a private position. Why? Because the only reason you want to be in the public is to share your family's talents and abilities in the proper position from the private to the public, not in reverse. But how do you know you're a part of stakeholder capitalism? When you were born in the public and you lived your whole life in the public. So how do you go private, Trust Christian? You got to have your family estate in place. The trust system or otherwise, it has to be a family estate that says we're going to copyright our signatures. We're going to copyright our images. We're going to copyright our voices. We're going to do everything so when we go out into the public, we have assets that we can lease, that we can utilize as collateral. Our family members, since they're going into public, guess what? We don't need social insurance from the government. Guess what we need? We need private insurance. Oh, they're trying to get rid of private insurance in the public though, right? We need universal health care. Oh, really? How's that working out in Europe right now? You're in the public. You're a stakeholder. You're entitled. Shareholder says, we don't need an entitlement. We're only here to share. Is your family only here to create and not take? Because guess what? The fact that you tried to take the public's wealth, the government said, hold on, before you take your hand out the cookie jar, there's a fee and there's a fine. It's called a tax. Because you decided to come into the public and create wealth, on the public side, there's a tax associated. Because we have stakeholders on this side, on the public side. That's what we want to have now, is stakeholders. We want people to be vested in our system, not investing in the system to make it better. We educate our trustees, everything comes from the private. Every big business has come from the private. Ladies and gentlemen, if you were offered $50 million by the government, you would sell your company to the government too. If you were given $25 million, you would sell your business and idea to the government too. We're not stupid. You think we're stupid? We're not stupid. We're definitely not stupid. Because that's what happens every single day. People build a company and sell stuff to the government. The government doesn't make anything. It doesn't make anything. It acquires those assets based off loans, based off contracts, leases, royalty payments. The government's a business too. And they're in the business of making sure that their stakeholders are vested. The overall population are shareholders in that overall thought process. Are you going to participate? Are you going to contribute? Are you going to share from your family estate and say, there's a cost to this? Or are you going to say, you know what? It's a hard road. It's not equal for everybody. So I'm going to vote for everybody to be equal. But there still will be haves and have-nots, ladies and gentlemen, in the stakeholder environment. Just to let you know. Haves and have-nots. The ones that are legislating to you, they're the haves. The have-nots will be anybody that is not in politics. Because the businesses will be converted to a position. There's a good movie. A lot of people may not be aware of this movie. It's called Atlas Shrugged. Atlas Shrugged. And this is a very controversial movie because of the author who wrote it, Ayn Rand. It's interesting that she wrote this book years ago. We still haven't read the book, but we watched the movie. Recommend if you want to be light on your mind, watch the movie. It pretty much dictates the book pretty well. It's actually three. This is actually 3 movies, so it's not just one movie. It's actually 3 movies about this lady's book, Ayn Rand, and she talks about stakeholder capitalism versus shareholder capitalism. Controversial as it may seem, was universal healthcare around when she wrote the book? No, she was predicting it in the book that there's going to be universal healthcare, just like there's already a social contract for healthcare, Medicare and Social Security. And then there's new contracts, social contracts being put in place in order to do what? Is that to free you or to encumber you to the system, to vest you in the system? It's called vesting. It says no need to invest. Because when you invest, you're at risk. When you just vest, you're already in. Definitely recommend watching it, Atlas Shrugged. It's on the internet, YouTube, you can watch it. It's actually probably free on YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, we do our best not to be political at this environment and this platform. This isn't about being political. This is about being aware of the conversations that are being had around you, whether you're out the house or not. Whether you know it or not, the people that have been voted in are saying or not, whether you know it or not. These are conversations for our trustees that we have, because as you move forward as a trustee, are you vested or are you investing into the shareholder capitalist system? Or are you waiting for a handout? Definitely shout out to all the trustees, and proud of all the trustees that are literally have grown year over year in trusteeship and have made it a point to leave their jobs. Ladies and gentlemen, y'all, some people think this is a game at the vault or something, but for some odd reason, the vault was just on the phone this past week with trustees that are leaving their jobs, that are decreasing their hours at their jobs if they have a job. They're leaving their job to do what we're talking about, participate in shareholder capitalism. People say, I don't know if I'm going to go reach out to the vault yet because I don't know if I want to participate. I just want to get a couple more stimulus checks and then I'm going to go ahead and fund my own dream. Ladies and gentlemen, if you live in a shareholder society, you can have private families and friends and outsiders invest in your dream still in a shareholder capitalism system. But if you don't have that, you have stakeholder, your neighbors won't have more money than you have. There's no need to get money from them. You already got it. Appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay.
especially if you listen this far all the way through. Always appreciate everybody that tuned in live, listen to replay, everybody that commented in the chat. Feel free to reach out, Christian@trustchristian.com. That's the email to get a consultation or move forward with the Vault and Trustee Training. Once again, that's Christian@trustchristian.com. Look forward to serving you all in 2021. But as it stands right now, we got a week or two more in 2020. And ladies and gentlemen, you all have an opportunity to start a corporation and move into the next year saying, look, I am going to participate in shareholder capitalism as opposed to waiting for stimulus checks and waiting for handouts, waiting for somebody to give you something which you call something from nothing. And the government doesn't create anything. So we appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. Thank you for tuning in live, listening to replay. Christian@trustchristian.com is the email. Look forward to hearing from you all. Appreciate everybody that reached out this year in 2020. Shout out to everybody that made it a point to say we're going to move forward with our family future, put our family in a private position and move forward in the private sector, and we're not going to be emotional about it other than passionate and enthusiastic, other than being fearful and letting fear run our life, letting past programming that previous generations have given us run our life, where people didn't start a business, where people didn't go after their goals and dreams, where a previous family members did not put us in a private position or put us in a position where we can learn what the private sector really is. When you enroll in trustee training, you learn what the private sector is. It's an education in private sector, let alone in trusteeship. You got to know the difference between public and private. Well, clearly, it's not too many organizations on the internet talking about that. The Vault knows that it provides that, and that's why we're so unique. And that's why we can continue to do what we do, because we know that no one else or a few people are out there talking about the public and the private and how to live in the private, how to be private, and still operate in shareholder capitalism. Because unless your family is sitting on certain amounts of money and you can practice banking internally, you might have to go out and share your talents and abilities. And you can lease those talents and abilities in the public when you know what you're supposed to do. And that means investing in your private education. Bottom line. How can you not invest in yourself, in your family's future? Because people want stakeholder mentality. They just want to show up to the game. Hey, there's no winners and losers. You know, you're black, I'm white, you're green, I'm yellow. And yeah, you know, we're all created equal on the rainbow scale. And yeah, there's no need to go work hard. There's no need to raise private funds. Right. Look at those countries right now. People brag about that nonsense. But when you have no frame of reference, you're not comparing it to anything. Someone said in the chat, just business. We are not our own business. That is very true. There was a famous rap song that one of the bigger rap artists of our time said, and the rap artist said, his name's Jay-Z, he said, I'm not the businessman, I'm a businessman. And that messed people up for a whole generation. It's one of those things like another rapper of the times, he said, the more money you have, the more problems you have. Yeah, right. That's a lie. People that are in poverty have a lot of problems. People that have money, substantial amounts of it, have different type of problems, but they're not worried about where their next meal is going to come from or if they can wash their body cleanly that night. There's different problems. It doesn't mean that the problems are bigger. But just like, once again, when we talk about, he says, I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman. And people don't know what that means. But go see if he has his businesses in his name. Because if he did, that means you could sue him off of his money. But somehow, people that get a certain amount of money, remember, it's not even based off your education. You can learn about the private sector. But once you get in the private sector, you got to get your money up. You got to get the family's money up so you can do what? So you can get in certain financial educations. Because it's based off of finance too. But how many people talk about that? Oh, I'm just trying to go into the private. You do go into the private, but now it requires you to raise capital privately. How do you do that? You got to go to the vault. You got to get your consultation. You have to go through and actually learn trustee training. Appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. Know this is a extended episode. Usually like to keep it to an hour. We run over a little bit, but always appreciate everybody for tuning in live. Feel free to share with your friends and family, and really just kind of contemplate on where you are internally with this whole thought process behind shareholder capitalism, and if you're living in it, what it really means to you. Because some people may say that there's no attack on it, but ladies and gentlemen, you don't need to worry about if it's an attack. You're seeing it already. It's not a worry. It's happening. Are you going to observe it, and are you going to vote in a different position, or are you just going to say, you know what, I don't want to take a position in the stakeholding aspect. I just want to be a shareholder. That means if we contribute, that means we have a stock. If we don't, that means we're liquidating. That means we have money and we're cashing out on our own volition. Not because the system is corrupt or is breaking down. It's because we want to liquidate. Stakeholder capitalism doesn't allow you to liquidate. What is there to liquidate? What is there to take money from? Everybody's getting the same amount, right? Everybody's getting the same level of equal care. Do you hear this social mentality? Oh, everyone's going to get the same level of care. Ladies and gentlemen, that's called the elite talking to you. They want to put you in stakeholder, slaveholder capitalism. Bottom line. Yeah, we're going to make sure that you and your family, because we're going to get a lifetime pension from the government, but we know you're not going to get a lifetime pension from the government, and you're never going to get the same care that we get in the government. But hey, you know, all men are created equal. That's what the social document said. Appreciate you all for tuning in live, listen to replay. Feel free to shout out Christian at Trust Christian at the email. Look forward to contacting you all moving into next year. Look forward to hearing from you all. You all enjoy the rest of your 2020, your day. Be blessed. Have fun. Make something. Look forward to hearing from you all. Christian at TrustChristian.com. Peace and blessings.